Welcome to our podcast where we look for opportunities in life to see a beautiful view. I'm Candy.
And I'm Paul. Thank you for joining us again today.
If you like what we're doing here and want to help us keep these episodes coming, you can now join the Beautiful View Patreon, which helps us cover our production costs and will enable us to continue producing new episodes. We would like to give a big shout out to our very first Patreon subscribers. Winnell.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Mama. Janae and Sandy. We are so blessed to have the love and support of our family and friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you would like to join our Patreon, we will send you a Beautiful View sticker and give you a shout out on the show to thank you for your support.
And every Monday morning, you will receive a weekly newsletter with insider information and encouragement for your week.
Memberships start at $5 a month. Also, if you are a business owner, then we have a great opportunity for you to become a sponsor of the Beautiful View podcast. We won't go into too many details here, but if you like what we're doing and are interested in sponsoring the show, send us an email at beautifulviewpod@gmail.com. We're so excited to share with you again today.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the beautiful view.
We could climb a mighty mountain, float on down a winding river, travel back in time and face our future too. I'm not scared of where I'm going, 'cause I know whose hands I'm holding. Oh, I'd go anywhere as long as you're going to. Well, I'd go anywhere as long as I'm with you.
In today's episode, we are going to talk about some of our bloopers and pickles we got into while traveling the country full-time in our RV for 6.5 years. Our podcast is called Beautiful View, and you may be thinking, where is the beautiful view in things that go wrong? Well, we have learned that in life, sometimes things go as planned, and of course, there is beauty in that. And sometimes they don't go as planned. But the beautiful view is still there. We might just have to be a little bit patient and maybe look a little harder.
It's just so easy to get a very romanticized view of living on the road in an RV. You know, you got a picture in your head of traveling the country, seeing all the sights and experiencing so many things. And don't get me wrong, the good far outweighed the bad, but we still found ourselves struggling at times.
Yeah. The interesting thing is all that we learned through those times and how many of those things we would, in the moment, consider negative circumstances ended up putting us in just the right place at just the right time. Our perspective definitely changed from panic when something went wrong to stopping, looking around and saying, okay, Lord, what do you have for us here? Who are we supposed to meet? Are you changing our path to a different direction? Are we being protected from something?
There wasn't always an obvious answer, but many times it was very obvious. And most of those instances had very little to do with us.
Every time something crazy happened, we would refer back to our family's key verse from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take."
Yeah, we have such a limited perspective. So, just for fun, this time, let's share some of the pickles we found ourselves in over the years.
Oh boy, there are a bunch. We might just have to give the highlights reel.
So one of the first incidents we had on the road was actually at a point where I was trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I had been regularly checking the tires on the RV because I had seen so many posts from other full-time RVers showing the destruction that happens when a tire goes bang.
Yeah.
And so I was anxious to avoid that. So every time we stopped for diesel, I would walk around the rig and the truck and just eyeball each tire, make sure they were fine. Mm-hmm. And we had one tire that wore out quicker than the others. And so I was like, we should just go in and change this tire. It's getting to the point where I'm starting to get concerned.
Yeah.
So we found this tire place, and it had a big parking lot, looked like it was, made
there was plenty of room.
Plenty of room, made to receive big vehicles. So we pulled in there, and they had us reverse into one of their bays. Mm-hmm. And each one of these bays had a post on either side, but they weren't too close to the vehicle, so that was fine. Mm-hmm. They got the tire changed in no time.
Yeah.
And so I pulled forward out of the bay, across the parking lot, and then turned at what I thought was just the right time before we reached the other side of the parking lot to turn out of the place and look in my door mirror, and I see a whole bunch of guys waving their arms running towards us. And we get out of the truck, and
we went around there, and it had peeled off the back side of the...
Just caught the edge of the back wall of the RV and peeled the corner away.
Yeah, so that was the corner of the bunk room where Tyler's little dirty clothes basket was.
His laundry basket was there.
There was a trail of socks and underwear.
Little underwear, right back to the point where I had clipped that post on the way out of the bay.
Yeah, so we took a few minutes just to kind of collect ourselves, and then we found the duct tape.
Yes. The crucial part of every RVer's box of tricks is the endless rolls of duct tape that you need on the road.
Yes. So we literally duct taped that corner back together to get to our next campground.
Yep. And then we had to run a whole bunch of repairs on that wall and fix it up, which we did.
We did. And it ended up being okay after that. One of our next stops was to be in a state park in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And on the way in, there was a big steep hill. You had to go into the campground, and then a big steep hill to go back out of the campground. And this was the one and only campground that we had ever made a reservation at that we just absolutely could not get into the site.
No, they kept changing our sites around so that we could try something else. And we tried 2 or 3 sites, and we just could not get into any one of them.
Yeah, and it wasn't that they weren't long enough. The problem was that the road was really narrow, and it had steep drop-offs on both sides.
Zero room for error.
Yeah, and then you had a bunch of trees that we were navigating as well, so it just wasn't going to happen. So we spoke to the nice people at the gate, and though they didn't have any other sites that fit us, they did refund our site fees, so that was nice.
The problem was we still had that steep hill to get out of the campground. Mm-hmm. And leading up to that point, we had started to get grinding noises from underneath the truck every time we tried a hill. Mm-hmm. And we had started to lose drive to the wheels. So engine was still running fine, but I couldn't get any of that power on the road. Yeah. So we tried it once, ended up rolling backwards.
That was terrifying.
And then we tried it again and managed to get up because there just wasn't enough room to take a run at it. Right, so we got out of the campground and rolled out of there. Yeah. I knew at that point that the drive shaft was toast. We'd managed to get out of the park. We got out onto the highway, which was very busy at that point because people were coming home from work and so on.
Yeah, it was rush hour.
So we were trying to decide what to do because I still couldn't get any power on the road. So we pulled over at the side of the highway because I couldn't get any further, and we had cars trying to get around us. Mm-hmm. We basically needed somewhere we could pull off and park the rig so that we could figure out what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as we were sitting there contemplating the meaning of life, there on the side of that busy highway, a lady drove down the side road right in front of where we were parked, and she parked up her car and she came across to ask us if we were okay.
Which we were not at that point.
We were not. We were a little rattled, honestly. But we explained briefly the situation and asked her if she knew of anywhere nearby that we could park the rig for a day or two while we got the truck fixed.
Yeah, and she told us, she said, you could park back up the road I just came down. Mm-hmm. She said, it's basically my driveway, and if you go about a half mile down the road, you'll see that there's a pull-out spot, and you might be able to fit in there.
Yeah.
And then you can stay there as long as you want to. Mm-hmm. And if you need any water, you can use the hose on the side of my house.
Yeah, it was so nice. And then she said something really interesting. She said, something just told me I should drive up here to check my mail today.
Yeah.
She said, I usually just check it when I'm going in or out, but today I just felt like I should come down here and check it.
Yeah, and her mailbox was right next to our rig where we'd stopped. Yeah.
So I think it kind of dawned on all of us at that exact same moment why she was there at that specific time and exactly who had sent her. And it was really emotional. And, I was just so grateful for God's protection and provision in that moment.
And that spot was perfect.
Oh, it was so beautiful.
It was gorgeous. You remember that's where we walked up the end of her driveway, and then there were all those fireflies that evening. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that was really neat. And the area kind of overlooked. It was a dairy farm or something, but just really beautiful hills and
we could watch the sunset. Mm-hmm. And we ended up being there for 5 days. We took the truck into a dealership and had the drive shaft replaced. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it worked out just as it should have. Yep,
it did. But, we've joked over the years that we've sent quite a few guardian angels into retirement. I'm really not sure that's a joke.
No, I don't think it is.
So, but...
The truck, though, it still wasn't quite right. It had a new drive shaft in it. Mm-hmm. And in theory, it should have been great, but there was still something going on. There was still a grinding noise. It just didn't feel like it was good. So we ended up stopping in Bowling Green, Kentucky for a little longer than we had planned and took it in once again to another Chevy dealer. Mm-hmm. They told us it's okay. The previous dealership obviously didn't install it properly.
Right.
And this brand new drive shaft has been shredded. So we can get you another one under warranty. You won't have to pay any extra. Just bring it.
We were grateful for.
Yeah, so just leave it with us and we'll get it fixed.
Yeah.
So they replaced the drive shaft. And after that, we headed for our summer destination in Ohio. Mm-hmm. That's probably the point where we were beginning to question our life choices. I know
what have we done?
I know we were very relieved to get to the youth camp in Ohio and just sort of
stay
chill out
for a while. Yeah.
But
You know what? There was also that time that we hinted at in our first episode when we had to call the police to come help us get out of a crowded parking lot in North Carolina. We kind of left our listeners hanging on that one. So let's tell that story.
Did. So we can finish up that story. This was our first big trip after all of the drive shaft episodes where we had gone through 2 drive shafts. And this time we needed to pull off the interstate. And so as we pulled off, we came up to this intersection, and to me it looked like every exit off of that intersection was down a hill. And we were still getting those grinding noises from underneath the truck, and I was just really worried that if we went down one of these side roads, we would end up in a place where we couldn't get back out again.
Yeah.
So one of the exits looked like it was a parking lot. It had a steep sort of entrance driveway to it and trees surrounding it, so you couldn't see every part of the parking lot, but I was like, there's a parking lot there, and I just dove for it. So we hit this slope going into the parking lot, and the truck didn't have enough juice to get up that hill.
Yeah.
And we were stuck.
We bottomed out on the back. We have a rack on the back that holds our big toolbox. And it kind of hung up on the road and dug into the freshly paved road. So, whoops. And it was a Friday evening, and all the locals were headed to the high school playoff football game in town. and they were all having to navigate around the back of our rig that was stuck in the road. So on that really busy road.
Yeah. And the truck was in such bad shape. We just couldn't move. Couldn't move backwards because we were dug into the driveway. Couldn't move forwards. So this guy pulls up alongside us, and he has a 4-wheel drive truck, and he graciously offered to haul us up into the parking lot because it's obvious we couldn't go backwards.
Yeah.
And so he did. He hauled us up in there in that parking lot.
Yeah. But then once we got up there, we realized how many cars were in the parking lot, and we were stuck. There was no way we could make it around the corner without taking out several parked cars. So after sitting there for a bit trying to figure out what to do, we finally decided we were going to have to call for help. So I looked up the local non-emergency number for the police department.
I'm pretty sure they were rolling their eyes and laughing on the other end of the line as I was trying to explain what was happening.
I'm sure.
But they sent out a very nice, very calm police officer to help us out of this pickle. And he ended up having to go around the stores that were around the parking lot there with a list of vehicle license plates, calling out the numbers and saying, if you have this number, could you please come back to your vehicle? We need you to move your car. So we were able to back up enough to allow the cars out. And then the officer stayed with us and watched out for us as we maneuvered around this tight parking lot. By that point, I was stressed.
We were all stressed.
And the kids are in the truck, and they're not happy either. So he offered to take us to a nearby business park where he knew that there was plenty of space to park up. He actually told us that there were lots of semis down there that used it as an overnight stop.
Yeah, and there were when we got down there.
And it was just super quiet. Perfect place to kind of compose ourselves.
Yes. He actually told us we could stay there for the night if we wanted to. They patrol down there and stuff. But thankfully, no one was injured and no property was harmed.
Yeah, except for our pride.
Yeah, except for maybe our pride. After that, though, we created a new rule for ourselves. No unmarked parking lots. Look for lots with semi-trucks. If they fit, we'll fit. We ended up parked in a parking lot that night. After we kind of collected ourselves a little bit, we carried on and we ended up in a parking lot of a fireworks stand with several semi-trucks for the night. There was plenty of room there, and we actually had plenty of room to put our slides out. So after all of that, we definitely considered that a win. So once we settled in for the night, we got a little tickled. It was a little bit funny, or we were delirious.
I think we were delirious.
But whatever it was, though we stayed the night in North Carolina, we decidedly did not do anything fun.
No.
So we didn't count the state of North Carolina on our map of states that we've been to, and we still haven't been back to get that sticker, so we might need a redo someday, but...
One day.
Yeah, one day.
Then there was the time at that state park in Georgia.
Oh, yes.
And late one night, Tipper needed to go out. This state park was in a place where there was no lighting.
Yeah, it was dark.
It was pitch black. Yeah. So I take her out. She's dragging me because she's seen like squirrels or rabbits or something.
Yeah.
So she's dragging me along, and my foot disappears down into this hole in the ground, which turned out to be one of those fire pits that's sunk into the ground. Yeah. And I trip, catch my shin on the edge of that metal fire pit. Yeah. And so I reach down to my leg and feel like wet.
Yeah, you made it back to the RV, but just when you saw the blood on your leg,
I was out.
Just about passed out on me.
I was kind of out.
So I had you sat down on the little steps inside the RV, and I got you bandaged up as best as I could.
Took care of me.
I ended up having to drive you into the nearest ER for stitches that night. So,
and wasn't that the same park that we had to get up that big hill in order to get out of it?
Yes, and at that point, we had made it a long way since our drive shaft issues, but the truck was still struggling to climb those steep hills.
So we ended up offloading a whole bunch of things at our site down the bottom there in order to shed some weight. So we took the toolbox off the back. We took the bikes out of the RV and anything else that we could find that we could leave at the bottom so that we could get rid of that weight and get the truck and RV up the hill. And we made it up just fine.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. And then you stayed at the top
with the RV.
With the RV. And then we detach the truck. I go back down, grab all the things, one truckload at a time, take them up the top, and we put it all back together again and drove off.
Yep. That was a good time.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. So we finally made it back home to Texas. And we go into our trusted diesel mechanic, and he takes one look at the back end of our truck, and he's like, well, of course you've got problems. They've removed most of the leaf springs.
Yeah.
The first owner of the truck had done a quote-unquote upgrade and put airbags in, removing a whole bunch of leaf springs because they thought they didn't need them anymore, which had thrown out the geometry of the truck. And every single time we put the power down, it was grinding up the drive shaft. So he did all of the replacements that were needed, rebuilt that back end of the truck, and we've had that set up for years now without a single problem.
Yep. Then in 2017, we got caught up in wildfires in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, and I was a little disappointed because that was a year we were supposed to hit the entire West Coast, but the fires and the smoke were just so bad. We ended up heading inland as far as we could to escape the smoke that was making us all sick.
Yeah.
And we were driving with the air conditioner on inside air, all with like wet bandanas around our faces just because it was that bad. Families were evacuating their homes to stay in the campground we were in, not knowing if they would even have a home to go back to. And it just began to feel like we weren't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So we donated our final night there at that campground to a family in need, and we just hit the road to find somewhere less smoky. So we drove and drove and drove
for hours
and ended up in Utah.
And Utah wasn't actually on our radar for this trip, but it was a great surprise.
It was.
It was in Utah that we discovered the joys of boondocking.
Yes.
We got out in those public lands there, and we're equipped for it. We have a generator. And so we parked under those beautiful dark skies just outside of Arches National Park.
Yes.
There were trails that led off to places where there were fossilized dinosaur tracks.
Yeah, that was really cool. That area was actually, they called it the Dinosaur Ballroom. Yeah.
Because it looked like dinosaurs had been dancing
there. Were
there.
So many concentrated tracks in that area.
It was amazing.
It was really neat.
And in our driving around off-road there was a lot of dirt.
Yeah, a lot of dirt.
A lot of dirt, which came into play. But it was such an interesting place. We loved it.
Yeah. Our next stop after Utah was to Colorado, and we stayed at a really beautiful state park there. And just down the road from there was a fish hatchery and a waterfall. So one of the days we were there, we decided we were going to go check out this waterfall.
Yeah.
So we drove up there, and we were gone from the truck maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah, we just walked down this grassy trail, and as it turned out, the waterfall wasn't very big, but it was pretty.
It was pretty, yeah.
Yeah, and we'd been gone 10, 15 minutes, turned around, came back to the truck, and as we were just a little distance away, I'm like, there's something wrong here. And I saw that it looked like at first that we'd left one of the windows wound down, but I knew that wasn't the case. And then we started noticing the glass that was on the ground, and someone had come up just in that few minutes we were down there, smashed the passenger window and grabbed your purse.
They had. And they were probably really disappointed because there was only about $3 and some change in it. But, you know, when something like that happens, it means you have to cancel all your cards. We had to contact the police and file a police report. And it meant we had to replace the window. It was just so frustrating.
Yep.
A farmer did eventually find my purse. It was tossed in a bush on the edge of his property, and they must have tossed it out the window, and they realized they weren't getting anything from me. So
the dirt of Utah, we had brought more of Utah with us than we had intended, which had lodged itself in the 3 radiators at the front of our diesel truck.
Yeah.
And when we came to cross Vail Pass in Colorado, our truck couldn't breathe, overheated, and died.
Yeah, we had to be towed, and it was something else. It took 2 tow trucks because, of course, we're so big. We had 1 truck for the fifth wheel and 1 truck for the truck.
Yeah.
And they towed us to the Chevy dealership, where we ended up spending a couple of nights, and they just weren't interested in moving on it very quickly.
No.
So we're hanging out there in their parking lot, living in our RV in the parking lot.
In their tiny little parking lot there.
Yeah.
42-foot fifth wheel and a truck, and they're just like, yeah, you can stay there as long as you want. We can't get to you.
Yeah.
That was when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went around the town. I eventually found another diesel mechanic, and he's like, yeah, I can take a look at your truck, bring it on in. And so I took it over there, and he dismantled the 3 radiators, laid them out on the floor of the shop. I was in the waiting room. He called me in there. He said, hey, I want to show you something. And he just had like a high pressure hose and was blasting out all of this dirt from the radiator, and it was clogged with dirt. Yeah. So it wasn't like a huge big deal. He got it all cleaned out, and we set off again. But we got a little way down the road, and suddenly the truck goes back into limp mode again.
Yeah, that's when we met Officer Dillon, Sheriff of the Year in my books.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
It was a Sunday afternoon, so we were having zero luck finding any kind of roadside assistance that day.
Yep.
And he was so awesome. He pulled over to check on us and gave the kids Gatorade and stickers. And he ended up calling in a favor to a friend who owned a tow truck.
Yeah, we were there for hours, and he was just really good with the kids. He
sat with us most of the day and just tried to, He
was just a great guy.
He was good.
The tow truck shows up. They hook up our entire rig on the back of one truck.
Because this time there's only one truck available.
One truck. And they haul it to a KOA about 10 miles away. I couldn't even look out the back of that tow truck. It was kind of scary.
It was. And I was so frustrated at that point. And when the next morning, when I was doing my quiet time, I even wrote a very frustrated entry in my prayer journal. Why in the world are we dealing with all of this? And what are we supposed to be doing here? Why do these things keep happening to us?
It was frustrating. It seemed like one thing after another.
But then, after I had expressed my frustrations in my prayer journal, I pulled myself together and I took Tyler down to the playground for a little bit at the very nice campground that we were, quote unquote, stuck at. And there was another little boy down there playing too, so they played together for a little bit. And I gathered his parents were in the cabin across the street, and I could see them, watching him from there. And his dad eventually came over and introduced himself as the little boy's dad, and then he proceeded to tell me that he had only found out several weeks before that he had this son. And he and his girlfriend had been taking the boy on weekend trips and stuff to do fun things so that they could really just get to know each other. And we talked for some time, and after a while, he looked me in the eye and he said, "You're a believer, aren't you?" And I said I was, and he said he could just tell, he knew it. And then he carried on pouring out his heart to me. And as we wrapped up that conversation, it was really sweet. He thanked me for listening and said that he believed God had sent me to encourage him that day. So he was going to try to be the best dad he could be for his little boy, and he truly believed that this was a gift from God. And you know what? So did I, because that interaction gave purpose to our misfortune.
Yeah, it's not about us.
Yeah.
We ended up stuck at that KOA for about a week while the transmission control unit was replaced and reprogrammed. And though it was an inconvenience, we were so grateful for a safe place to stay. And the owner at the campground took me back and forward from the place that was doing the work on the truck, which was about 14 miles away. Mm-hmm. And we're just thankful to God that we had this divine appointment. Sometimes our inconveniences aren't about us at all.
Yeah, sometimes they have a greater purpose. There were so many of these instances on the road.
We could seriously talk all day about the crazy situations we got into while we were on the road. We survived severe weather, flash floods, tornadoes, and a derecho in Iowa. We've had blowouts on the RV that could have ended badly, but instead just slowed us up a little bit. And in hindsight, we realized we avoided other things that we could have ended up right in the middle of.
Yeah, but I'm sure our listeners don't have all day to listen to all of our crazy stories. The biggest takeaway from all of these experiences is that sometimes God has allowed obstacles in our path to direct us exactly where we needed to be, to coincide with exactly the right people along the way. Mm-hmm. It also taught us how to respond when things didn't go exactly as planned.
In the early days, it was so stressful when things went wrong.
Oh, it was.
And later on, it could still be pretty stressful at times. Mm-hmm. But we had grown in our faith, and we learned to stop and look around first. Look around for opportunities to serve the Lord and be obedient to what he was asking us to do in that moment, or for what he might be protecting us from or redirecting us to.
Yes, these experiences have truly shaped us. They have taught us not to focus so much on ourselves and our circumstances, but to always look for opportunities to see the beauty of the situation, to see things around us through the eyes of Jesus. I wouldn't trade a single one of them because they are all a part of our journey to being exactly where we are today and who God created us to be.
Real people who love God and love others.
Yes.
We want to encourage you today that when something in life doesn't go your way, stop, look around, and pray. Mm-hmm. God may have you in the middle of that situation for a reason, and you might be just the person he needs for that place at that time. Thank you for listening today. If you know of someone who would enjoy this podcast, please tell them about it.
Please.
Visit us at Beautiful View Podcast on Facebook or Instagram. Share our posts or share the link to our podcast. In our next episode, we will be talking about stuff.
It's amazing how much priority we give to the stuff in our lives. Mm-hmm. We got rid of so much stuff when we moved into the RV. We'll talk a little bit about the downsizing process, how it has been collecting new stuff and starting over again in a house, and all the things we learned from those experiences.
Thank you again to Tyler and Kelsey, the Hopeful Few, for permission to use your music on our podcast. Check them out on Spotify or Apple Music. The links are in our show notes.
And if you have any questions that you would like us to answer or suggestions for things you would like us to talk about in our future podcasts, simply email us at beautifulviewpod@gmail.com.
And just a reminder, please consider joining the Beautiful View Patreon channel. This will really help us keep these episodes coming. Again, the link is in our show notes, and we will also post it on our Facebook page.
We hope you have a great day, and remember to always keep an eye open for opportunities to see a beautiful view.
We could climb a mighty mountain, float on down a winding river, travel back in time and face our future too. I'm not scared of where I'm going, 'cause I know whose hands I'm holding. Oh, I'd go anywhere as long as you're going too. And and I'd go anywhere as long as I'm with you. Yeah, I'd go anywhere